Our planet generates an incredible amount of extraordinary phenomenon. Some we take for granted, even if they are a little difficult to predict. Others occur to us as nothing short of miraculous. Often, these are events in places seldom seen by people. They are rare, mysterious, and many seem outright impossible. This series encapsulates the remarkable with the exceptional. Is seeing really believing? With the help of leading scientists, fact will be separated from fiction. Join us as we witness the extraordinary migration of the giant spider crabs on the east coast of Australia. See fire and ice combine to form epic ice caves and glaciers in Iceland, and take a magical aerial tour of the fairy Chimneys in Cappadocia, Turkey. It is a journey taken with eyes wide open. Welcome to Impossible Planet. It's an annual event, but it's surrounded by mystery. It's a scene with a cast of thousands, but it's not a film. It's an epic migration, yet a modest drive from a major city. This is the extraordinary giant spider crab migration. The destination of this intrepid march is at the base of Port Phillip Bay, little over 60 miles from the city of Melbourne.
I remember seeing the spider crabs for the first time, and I like to think that I was quite aware of, just how unique the marine environment is down here. But when I saw the aggregation for the first time, it just kind of blew my mind. You see images on land of, the Serengeti and the wildebeest kind of traveling across it. And you never expect to see something like that underwater, yet alone on Melbourne's front doorstep.
Cherie Morris is a marine biologist who has been diving with the giant spider crabs for the past 10 years. She's been studying their activities when they return for their annual meetup during Melbourne's cooler months.
For me, seeing the spider crabs when they're en masse, it's like being a kid in a candy store. I just absolutely love it. And the only thing that gets me out of the water is being extremely cold and not being able to feel my limbs because I've been in the water so long.
With the legendary Great Barrier Reef to the north of Australia, the cold waters off Melbourne's Port Phillip Bay, at first, might not seem an obvious destination to experience an aquatic wonderland.
People look to the tropics to see colour and diversity, but you don't have to, it's all here. Over 80% of the marine life found here, it's found nowhere else on Earth. I think more people need to know about the giant spider crabs and the aggregations that are formed. I mean, who wouldn't want to experience one of the world's greatest natural migrations? I think that's amazing. But also for me, it's a really great opportunity to put the spotlight on the marine life of the temperate shores.
From March, the spotlight is firmly on the giant spider crabs. With a body roughly the length of a pencil and legs a little shorter, these crustaceans are usually solitary beings. Resembling a rock or a piece of coral, complete with algae and fungi living off it, the giant spider crab is a striking creature.
They're really, really massive and impressive to see when they're walking about in the sandy shallows. I can see why people may be a bit apprehensive about them because they are massive. But for me, I'm absolutely fascinated by them. I suppose they're spider-like in their appearance, which is why they get their name. So they've got these long legs. But for me, I just love watching them and documenting their behavior.
Giant spider crabs inhabit water depths ranging from a couple of meters to 80. Precisely why the crabs select the shores of Port Phillip Bay to assemble is not well understood. Some theories suggest they come for the shallow waters and shelter from nearby strong tidal currents, but their choice of locale remains a mystery.
In terms of the ideal environment for spider crabs, we're still learning what that actually is. Obviously, they love the sandy shallows of Port Phillip Bay, and then they go back out to the deeper sections of Port Phillip. They've often been seen around rocky shores as well, but that's the limit of our knowledge to date until we do more research on them.
For a few months each year, the sandy, shallow shores of Port Phillip Bay are teeming with hundreds and thousands of crabs. It's rare that such a spellbinding sight should also be such an accessible one. Despite this, there are only a few people in the world who have witnessed the migration on an annual basis. Fortunately, this exceedingly rare footage has been captured by a dedicated diver over the course of a decade, giving a truly unique perspective and rare glimpse into the unknown world of the giant spider crabs.
Seeing the giant spider crabs is nothing short of absolutely spectacular. It's just incredible. You know, just walking along the shores, you can sometimes see them in the shallows. By snorkeling, you can see them scuba diving in a boat, on a stand-up paddleboard. The accessibility, I think, is also really important and what makes it so special.
While the choice of their location is open to speculation, less ambiguous is their mission. They come to the shallower shores of Port Phillip Bay to molt. When giant spider crabs arrive, they wear a well-worn shell. Although it offers robust protection, like its 21st century human counterparts, crabs must update their hardware. Unwelcome viruses and parasites can grow on their shells, affecting their health. But as importantly, a crab that's ready to grow can't when wearing its hard, inflexible shell. Like other crustaceans and insects, crabs wear their skeleton on the outside of their body. To grow, it must discard this and develop a new, bigger one.
Like other crustaceans, giant spider crabs have a hard suit of armor, if you like, which protects them. The downside of that is when they need to grow, that doesn't stretch. So what they have to do is they have to basically crawl out of that hard exoskeleton and then they grow a new, softer one.
The spider crabs must find a way out of discarding last season's armored jacket and replacing it with this season's. To do this, the crabs have evolved an extraordinary process. They secrete a hormone that triggers the loosening of its hard coat. Then weak suture lines along their shell burst open.
When the crabs are molting, they've got a special enzyme that actually helps them do that. And they basically crawl out backwards from their shell, and their shell actually opens up like a tin, and they crawl out.
The process of squeezing out of their old armor is gradual, taking at least an hour. The crab emerges clean and a magnificent orange. It will take 4 days for the crab to grow a new exoskeleton. During this time, the freshly molted crab is jelly-like and must go without a hard shell.
They're coming in to molt and to shed their hard exoskeleton so that they can grow. And during that time when they grow their new exoskeleton, that's really, really soft.
The giant spider crab pumps itself up to its new size. While this sophisticated process enables the crab to enjoy a growth spurt, it comes with a high cost. When the crab re-emerges from its old shell, it's as though it is reborn. And, like a newborn, it's uncoordinated and almost completely defenseless. As if being soft and unwieldy didn't make them vulnerable enough, newly molted crabs are also bright orange, rendering them even more conspicuous to hungry predators.
The type of predators that will try and prey on the crabs when they're really soft, you've got octopus, you've got the massive smooth ray, but you've also got animals like seabirds which will see them and they'll actually dive down and actually attack the soft crabs.
Just when it didn't seem possible anything else could be stacked against them, the molting spider crabs also release signals that predators have learned to detect.
So how do animals know when the spider crabs are in? I think the key thing is visually for birds they can see, but also for other animals such as the octopus or the ray, they would actually pick up on chemical cues, so from the molting process, that would alert them that the spider crabs are here and that they're ready for the picking.
Although the chemical cues attract predators, could it be that those chemical cues released by the giant spider crabs are a call out to other crabs to congregate? After all, if during the precarious process of molting, someone else has literally got their back, their chances of survival should increase. It's the age-old adage of safety in numbers.
By coming in with all your crab mates and getting undressed together and then waiting for you to shell to harden. In terms of protecting themselves, obviously that's where the aggregation is really important.
The spider crabs stagger their molting over several months. Freshly molted crabs seek refuge underneath the shield of older, hardened shells that have yet to undergo the costume change. Hundreds of crabs form a single mound. Yet even in mass, they are amazingly nimble and synchronized.
They're so mobile and they move and they often splinter into different aggregations. And just seeing these kind of tangled claws and legs and, you know, how they kind of move as one unit, it's one of the most spectacular things that I think you will ever see.
Moving as one, they avoid being snatched. But the stingray is not easily deterred. Growing up to 4 meters in length, the smooth stingray is Australia's largest. Often weighing as much as a motorbike, the rays glide along the seabed, searching. The eyes of the stingray are on top of its body, so it cannot see the seafloor. Sensitive electrical sensors around its mouth pick up electrical charges of potential prey. But when the crabs form large mounds, it's possible that a prowling stingray detects only a single large creature, which it is more likely to leave alone. Isolated crabs, however, are most vulnerable. A battle for survival ensues. It's as desperate as any battlefield. Some merge into formations. Others scramble for their lives. until the danger finally passes. Even when not under assault, the spider crabs maintain a mound formation. Their activity creates a pop-up ecosystem.
I think the other really interesting thing about spider crabs and the aggregation is that when they come in, they actually create these kind of mobile moving reefs or ecosystems that mobilize the sediments and food in the water column and provide shelter for lots of different animals. And then it's like these spider crabs could be classified as their own marine habitat.
The crabs move along the shores, cleaning up the seabed of carrion as they go. As carnivores, they typically scavenge for dead fish and small crustaceans. There are even times when they will look to each other for a feed.
The other thing we've recently documented is they'll also feed off the shells of each other. A lot of spider crabs will have marine life growing on those shells, so they'll feed off that, but they'll also cannibalize each other.
It seems a paradox that the multitude of crabs that assemble for the molt is both a source of safety and a hazard of its own.
I think that's an opportunistic kind of behaviour. I don't think it's a part of their feeding strategy. I think it's, well, there's food here, I'll kind of grab it because there's so many of them, and food and resources are limited when you've got hundreds of thousands of them in the same area.
Competing for food is yet another of the many challenges in the day of the life of a giant spider crab. By the end of the molting season, the only leftovers are the old armored coats strewn across the ocean floor. It looks like the aftermath of carnage. But really, it's a mark of another dramatic aggregation. Over the course of the molting season, what was a mass of tan-colored shells becomes a teeming floor of orange.
I was down only at about 4 meters, and I swam in a line, a straight line, for 5 minutes, and the spider crabs were as far as the eye could see. They were just everywhere on the horizon, and they weren't spread out, they were thick, and they carpeted the shallows in this mat of orange with these tangled legs and claws.
Come July, the annual aggregation disperses. The giant spider crabs retreat back to rocky outcrops and reefs along the southern coast of Australia.
In terms of whether or not spider crabs are social outside of their migration times, we don't know. But from the evidence that we've found, and the limited evidence that we've found, they seem to be quite solitary creatures. So it seems to us as though outside of their migration periods and their aggregation periods where they're molting, they're actually quite solitary. So how they coordinate that, by coming in their hundreds of thousands, is absolutely beyond me.
As mysteriously as they came, the crabs depart again, only to emerge again so spectacularly next year. This is a place where you're not just surrounded by the natural world, but a supernatural world, where impossible opposites attract.
It's a land of great contrasts. It's a land of wonder.
There's a meeting of, ice and fire. We have all the extreme, the lava, very hot, glaciers, very cold.
On the south coast of Iceland lies a landscape that belies possibility, where volcanoes, adorned by strange glaciers, combine to form stunning ice caves. Here, the forces of nature flex incredible power and create astonishing beauty. They leave their mark not just on the landscape, but on the consciousness of the people who live here.
This is what folk legends are really about, is explaining something that you need to have words for that you don't really know how to deal with.
The source of this astonishing scene is here at Katla Volcano, the southernmost volcano in Iceland.
There is this big ice cap on top. It's about 550, 600 square kilometers. That is all formed on the top of the caldera of Katla.
Standing nearly 1,500 meters high, Katla's altitude ensures it is cold enough for the winter snowfalls that collect on top of it to compact, freeze, and descend, forming a glacier that for thousands of years has been slowly crawling downwards, pockmarking the landscape with a labyrinth of intricate patterns, caves, and cones. For Iceland's earliest settlers, these forces quickly captured the imagination and demanded respect.
If you stand near a glacier, you hear it moving, you hear it growling, and you realize again that no army can stop this. If it decides to go forward, it will go forward. Same with lava. Nobody can stop it.
Dr. Terry Gunnell has been interested in the stories people tell about landscape, beliefs, and history throughout his life, and teaches at the University of Iceland.
In the case of the earliest stories that we have, and there aren't many of them, of volcanology and earthquakes, then we see that people are using supernatural spirits to explain these. They don't know how they work, although they have some sense that lava must have been once alive and then solidified. They're an attempt to explain the landscape, but it's also an attempt to explain strange things that they've heard or seen, disappearances of people, things of this kind.
Ever since Vikings started settling in Iceland, the natural forces emanating from the landscape have left inhabitants in awe.
In a sense, these immigrants were the ones who started clothing it with stories, trying to explain the strange things that they were encountering, the smells, the activity of the land, the difference of this land as opposed to where they come from.
Hundreds of years later, the natural phenomena that surrounds people here continues to produce inquiring minds.
We want to understand the Earth. We want to understand how the Earth is formed and how the landscape became the way it is. And that's very important.
Where once folk stories explained why the land behaved the way it did, today it is science.
What do volcanoes do? They build up, they become high-standing ground. And where do glaciers form? Glaciers form on these high mountains. So the volcanism and the glaciers, they are linked.
And it is volcanoes that have helped create one of the most unusual glaciers on Earth.
We are standing on Sólheimajökull, which is an outlet glacier. It's a long outlet glacier coming from a bigger glacier called Mýrdalsjökull on the south coast of Iceland. It's almost like a river of ice flowing down from the mountains, down here to the almost sea level. So it's it's flowing much slower than water, of course. We can think of it as a slowly flowing frozen ice water going down from the mountains.
Iceland's frozen glacial water is some of the world's purest. So pure, in fact, you can drink it straight from the source. Katla Volcano is the foundation of this giant frozen river. It is also the source for the bizarre cookies and cream formations that adorn it. In a unique union, the colliding worlds of fire and ice have blended to create these bizarre patterns and cones.
We're standing on a glacier. The volcano is nearby, and the ashes from the volcano has at some point been deposited on the surface of the glacier.
This volcanic ash caked the surface of the glacier after an eruption. Layers of ash then became sandwiched under more layers of snow and ice. The constant gradual downward flow of the glacier has carried the ash with it.
We have many ash layers trapped inside the glacier. So the glacier flood moved down, but not at the same speed from one location to another one. You look at the glacier from above, you will see those black layers zigzagging through the glacier. It's very nice.
The striking patterns emerge as the ash becomes buffeted by the layers of ice that are slowly moving and melting before freezing again.
The glacier is of course flowing from a large area, and when it goes into the valleys, the pattern changes. Some ice goes in different directions. And that's why when you see these zigzag forms, you are seeing just different melting processes.
As if the marbled ice wasn't striking enough, dotted around the glacier are strange black cones.
So what we have here, we have what we call a dirt cone. If I could wash away all the ash, you will see pure blue ice. So you can see underneath, it's just a thin layer of ash. Underneath, it's like pure blue ice, yeah.
These dirt cones act as markers of glacier melt. Holes in the glacier became filled with a layer of volcanic ash. Despite its molten hot origins, the ash insulated the ice beneath it, protecting it during the warmer summer months, even as the surrounding ice melted away.
So we have to imagine we had like the glacier was 15 meters higher. So we had a hole, the bottom get full of ash. Everything disappeared the year after. At a point, so the level of the glacier was here, so we had ash was back to the surface. And then the ice which was around melted and disappeared. And now we have a dirt cone.
Dirt cones can range in size from a few centimeters to tens of meters in height. They are just one of the many natural formations that make this site so spectacular. Many meters underneath this mighty glacier lies another world of ice. Fashioned by seasonal watermelt and the volcanic heat emanating from hundreds of feet below, the elaborate cavernous spaces leave visitors awestruck. Standing within these ever-changing caves can make you feel as though you've gone right to the core of this extraordinary land. The interplay of ash and ice creating a gleaming spectacle.
Here's nature itself at play. And there is so much richness and so much variety. And as you get further in, then the ice is usually always almost transparent. If there's an ash layer on top or some dirt, then it becomes very dark. It is this interaction of light and shadow and refraction of light that gives you an endless array of colors and shades.
Sculpted entirely by nature's hand, these glacier caves are constantly evolving, particularly over the summer months. Increased sunlight and warmer temperatures, along with the surface meltwater, drain and erode existing ice caves and fashion new ones. In autumn and winter, cooler temperatures harden and stabilize the caves. Tie in the underground hydrothermal activity occurring independent of these seasonal cycles. It's no wonder these ice caves can dramatically alter even within the course of a single winter. It seems improbable that something so magnificent should also be, ultimately, temporary. These ever-changing glacier caves will eventually disappear because glaciers across Iceland are melting.
they're continuously responding to small changes in climate. This glacier is known to actually respond quite rapidly. So we've seen it actually getting longer in the 70s and 80s. And since 95, it's been receding.
Guðfinna is on a mission to measure the melting rate of as many glaciers as possible. With the help of her students, she makes the trek out to the glacier carrying a steam drill, which they will use to help them measure how much the glacier is melting. Once heated, the steam drill is used to core into the glacier and insert the measuring wire.
In the springtime, we measure how much was snowing during the wintertime, and in the autumn, we measure how much was melted during the summertime. And then it's almost like your bank account. So we measure how much goes in and how much goes out. And if you take more out than you put in, the glacier is going to get smaller, like your bank account, if you take more out. And this is what we're observing now. And what we're seeing now on short time scales, that the glaciers are responding to the global warming. So the temperature is increasing and the glaciers are melting.
The impact of the melting glaciers will be seen and felt far and wide.
As the glaciers are disappearing, we'll see that the landscape is going to change. How it looks, the white surface of the glacier will disappear. And then some flora or some vegetation will actually come in. It can change the surrounding around the glaciers, but also in a wider context that we will have the different seasonality in the water, for example, in the rivers. And that can have an effect on the vegetation as well.
As this glacier reacts to the changing climate, the black and white patterns that line it, along with the caves below it, will morph. Yet there's another event that could drastically accelerate that: a volcanic eruption.
Katla is one of the most active and notorious volcanoes in Iceland. But it hasn't erupted now for 100 years, and everybody has been waiting for an eruption for a long time.
When Katla erupts, it's not only the volcanic ash or lava that concerns researchers. It is the powerful forces that would flow from the rapidly melting ice cap, a sight that Professor Nick Petford has experienced firsthand.
The big risk really to Icelanders is not the ash necessarily, it's flooding. Because the volcano, the caldera, where the lava often comes out from, is under a thick layer of ice. The first thing that happens is that melts and you get these amazing floods, vast, powerful floods. So that's the big hazard.
Understanding the behavior of volcanoes and the glaciers that adorn them is an important way of preparing against an eruption or a flood. Today, the natural forces at play keep researchers alert in their effort to keep us informed and prepared. In the past, folktales played this role, with stories to explain the inexplicable and make sense of the landscape.
There was a magician who was going blind, and a servant came running to him and said, "There's water coming towards us from inland." He told the servant to go and take a bucket and bring back some of the water to him. And then he smelt it. His argument was that it was water sent by another magician. What's interesting about that story is that he smelled the water. And glacial eruption will cause glacial floods. And that water is very, very dirty and smells of sulfur. So what he's describing is actually a glacial flood, which is seen then as having been brought about by magic. But the element of smell, again, suggests something, again, supernatural, but associated with volcanic activity. And that goes back to the early medieval period, that story.
It is these powerful expressions of nature that draw and carve the remarkable scenes we see today. Scenes that only exist because of the bizarre, surely impossible union of opposites.
The fact that the landscape is so alive, that the glaciers and the land can talk to you. It's full of impossibilities in that sense.
Just seeing the force of nature, how you can see just one single event changing something that you didn't expect to see, you thought was there forever. That is very educational and humbling to see.
Everything about this location is a delight to the senses. In Persian times, this area was known as Katpatukya, the land of the beautiful horses. These days, although the name has changed, its vast rolling plains, rugged mountains, and dormant volcanoes remain. Newer and even more striking features have appeared, growing, shifting, and changing with every curl of the wind and ray of the sun.
It's very magical and it's otherworldly. You would experience like going outside of this planet within a very short distance, I would say. How many people will experience that?
Rising out of the sun-kissed ground, punctuating the Turkish landscape, these are nature's very own enchanted castles. As if out of a fairy tale, their story is one of majesty and mystery. 60 million years in the making, these spectacular formations, aptly and affectionately known by the locals as fairy chimneys, are very real and are located in the renamed region of Cappadocia in central Turkey. Even the more formal geological name for these formations has mythical origins. While they are known as fairy chimneys here in Turkey, across the globe in North America, they're commonly referred to as hoodoos. Fittingly, it is thought that this name has its origins in the word voodoo, a Western African-based religion in which magical powers can be associated with natural figures and formations.
The densities of fairy chimney is unparalleled in Turkey. They have different color, different shape, different structures.
As a result, each year, thousands of tourists make the journey to visit these structures, fascinated by their beauty and enigmatic existence. So how did they get here? And why do they look the way they do? The formation is as astonishing as the finished product.
So Cappadocia shouldn't be there. We shouldn't have volcanism in this place. Yet we have, simply because of the convergence between plates.
It all began millions of years ago with the eruption of several nearby volcanoes.
So the eruptions themselves occur between 10 million and exactly 2.5 million years. They have been dated by radioisotopic technique.
These tremendous eruptions blanketed the region in boiling lava and thick ash. Over the course of many years, this then solidified and formed a soft rock known as tuff, which was later covered in a final stronger layer of basalt, a darker, much sturdier rock form common to volcanic regions.
At the time, the volcano truly exploded and covered a huge area of multiple layers of ashes like that. So it extended over like several 100 kilometers wide. But before 5 million, nothing happened to those layers because there was no river system and therefore they weren't eroded. But after, you had a river system because the entire region uplifted, so rise up, easier for the river to carve structure in the soft rocks, and you have the chimney that start to develop.
As the natural elements worked their magic, portions of this rock slowly eroded away. Heavy rainfall transformed the once smooth plateau into a complex pattern of gullies, the water carving its way through the landscape, finding, exposing, and weakening existing fissures in the rock. The stronger top layer of basalt remained in some areas, resisting the battering of the acidic rain, gale-force winds, snow, and rising and falling glacial tides, forming a protective cap over the softer rock beneath. This igneous rock allowed the conical structures of tough rock to remain. The downward pressure of this heavy hat, in fact, assisting the softer body to resist erosion.
So the rocks, they have different color because of their chemical composition. If you put iron in a magma chamber, natural iron from the mantle, it's going to give rise to a rock which is darker. We call that in technical term more mafic. So more iron, darker rock. So you see these very white layers, it's very poor in iron. You see this usually tends to be the cap of the fairy chimney, which is darker, contains more iron.
The result is the towering structures you see today. Proudly rising out of the ground, their varying banding colors are a tribute to the many different layers of sediment that contribute to their existence, the years they took to form, and the weathering they have resisted. The forces that once created the World Heritage Site, however, are also a threat.
In fact, as soon as the top is gone by erosion, the rest follow really, really quickly. And everything gets flattened in a few tens of thousands of years.
One of the best ways to respect and enjoy the fragile landscape is from the air. The surreal landscapes, coupled with excellent flying conditions, make this one of the best balloon flight spots in the world.
You would feel like you're out of this planet. You would feel like if you start to walk there, I can guarantee that you will feel fallen in love at first sight because it's more beautiful than its pictures. The beauty comes from both nature and also human craftsmanship. There are so many things to explore in Cappadocia.
Today, the chimneys have taken on the look of sweet honeycomb. This new, strange form makes them look even more like they should exist in a world of fiction and fantasy, where mystical creatures inhabited stone castles and fairies ruled the kingdom. According to local legend, this was indeed the case. These extraordinary formations were once used to shelter humans from the wrath of feuding giants who roamed the area.
So once upon a time, the giants, the humans, and fairies were living together. But giants were not very nice to humans. So sometimes they were throwing the fireballs from the mountain.
The fairy king, unimpressed with the bad behavior of the giants, banished them, forcing them to live underground. To ensure the giants were never able to harm the humans again, the fairies allowed them to live inside the chimneys, while they kept a protective eye on them from above, in the hat of the rock structure. In reality, the chimneys providing a safe haven isn't too far from the truth. However, it wasn't the mythical giants who caused trouble for the rock inhabitants. Early inhabitants in the Hittite era sat uncomfortably on the boundary of rival empires, resulting in the need to tunnel and hide in the rock itself. By the 4th century, Christians fleeing the persecution of the Roman Empire took up refuge in the Cappadocia. Discovering the malleable nature of the stone, they established monastic communities, excavating dwellings to safely live.
And that was great for them because, look, we can dig through the rocks and we're gonna build home. Well, that's fine, but it's even better than that. They could hide in this place, right? because they've dig so deep in the ground in those formations that it can cover up to 9 stories deep.
Although long abandoned, remnants of their past inhabitants are clear to see, wonderfully preserved in the cool darkness of the stone. Open to the public, thousands of tourists visit here every year to walk amongst and within the fairy chimneys, marveling at what is left of the intricate paintwork, the blackened stones where the kitchens once stood, and at the maze of tunnels running deep beneath the earth, used to evade attackers and commute between homes in safety. Centuries later, these structures are still revered by the Turkish people, and the magical safe haven they provided for their persecuted occupants has turned into a popular location for locals and tourists alike.
Those rocks, they don't last long. Like I said, the lifetime of a chimney is a few million years, but once you dig through all the rocks, then there's nothing left after, let's say, 15, 20. So it's a unique opportunity for us as a species to live at this time to see these rocks, because they go down very, very quick.
Although their existence is almost impossible, for many it was, and still is, a gift, a safe haven, a place of industry, religious freedoms, majestic beauty, and natural awe. The spell of the fairy chimneys has not yet been broken.